raised the dead. He walked on the water. Miracle after miracle, He showed His power over everything this world has to offer. But yet in His life, He was subject to the Father. And as He prayed there before His death, He said, "Not my will, but thine be done." We remember the teaching of Jesus, the great master teacher. No other man has walked the earth who taught like Jesus did. Jesus literally rocked the world as He gave revolutionary teaching. Not an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but He said, "Turn the other cheek." He said, "Love your enemies. Pray for them that persecute you." He said, "Go the second mile." He said, "Love. Be kind one to another. Forgive one another." Think of the teaching of Jesus. We think of His obedience to the Father. In all that Jesus did, He made sure that He did the will of the Father. And again, what an example for us. Think of the good deeds that He did, always putting others ahead of Himself. And one word that is synonymous with Jesus would have to be the word compassion. He fed the multitudes because He had compassion. He said they were like sheep having no shepherd. And then, of course, we think of His death, His burial, His resurrection, and His ascension into heaven. Jesus walked upon the earth approximately 33 years, yet He made more of an impression and has been remembered more than anyone to ever live. And we as Christians do this every first day of the week in memory of Him. You see, this observance offers the opportunity to remember His words also. How can we remember Him without remembering what He taught? In Luke 24 and verse 8, we read specifically, "And they remembered His words." Remember His teaching on purity? In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 8, Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Remember His words on the will of God, "Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father, which is in heaven." Remember His words on how to treat others. We call this the golden rule, Matthew 7 and verse 12. "Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets." Remember His words on prayer. Jesus taught the disciples how to pray in Matthew chapter 6, beginning with verse 9. He said, "After this manner therefore pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed or holy be Thy name. Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever." And then, of course, we remember His words concerning the lost. He said, "For the Son of Man," speaking of Himself, "For the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which is lost." Luke 19 and verse 10. So you see, as we partake of the Lord's Supper, we need to reflect. We need to look back. But then also, as we partake of the Lord's Supper, we need to do some inspection. Inspection. In 1 Corinthians 11, 27 and 28, he said, "Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink the cup of the Lord unworthily," and this simply, as the American Standard says, an unworthy manner, "shall be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of the bread and drink of that cup." Now, this self-examination involves a proper frame of mind. Verse 27. When we partake of the Lord's Supper, we ought to push everything else out of our mind, and we ought to concentrate. We ought to give our 100% attention to what we're doing. remembering that Jesus died for me. Worshiping God acceptably is not easy. I hope you are not misled, that you've not been deceived to think that it just happens naturally. It doesn't. Self-discipline is what is required. And it takes teaching, it takes training, it takes working to concentrate, to focus upon every act of our worship. You know, it's easy to allow one thing that is said or one action of another person to distract us, and we look and we're already doing something else in worship. How tragic, as we're partaking of the bread, that we would allow ourselves to let our minds stray and wonder on things not pertaining to Jesus' death. The same being true with the fruit of the vine. You see, I need to ask myself, what is my motive? As I eat the bread and as I drink this fruit of the vine, what is my motive? Is it only force of habit? Is it merely tradition? Have I really prepared myself for this day? I would suggest, my friends, that we need to go back. We need to go back. Years ago, before the modern conveniences that we have of electric irons and steamers and all of these things, it was a habit, a custom. People would begin preparation on Saturday for the first day of the week. Mama would wash the clothes and make sure that they were ironed, and that might take hours, maybe half a day. Daddy might make sure that the shoes were all shined and polished and ready to go. In the days of the horse and wagons, they would make sure that the wagon was ready and prepared, and that the horses would be brushed and ready. They didn't have the modern conveniences. They worked a whole lot harder than we did today, or do today. But they prepared for the first day of the week. I would suggest that we need to be prepared before we enter these doors to worship God. We should have prepared ourselves by praying in advance about our worship, by thinking about what we're here for. Fellowship, that's good. We're going to eat in a little while, that's fine. But we are here to worship. And as we partake of these two elements, we need to be prepared, realizing that this is a very important part of not just Sunday, but of all week. We need to ask ourselves the question, am I at peace with God and my fellow man? Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verses 23 and 24, "Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and thou rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go, and first be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift." You see, this is that preparation. Peter talks about the fact that when there's problems in the home between husband and wife, our prayers are hindered. Think about that in this setting. Problems, difficulties need to be settled beforehand. Why? So that as we partake of these elements, we're doing so in the right frame of mind, pleasing to God,